This, my friend, is a book containing the inventions, researches, and writings of Nikola Tesla, who Elon Musk named his company off of. And today, I want to tell you how this man may have single-handedly been responsible for the most mysterious events to ever occur in the continent of Russia. This has since been called the Tunguska event, and many refer to it today as Russia's Roswell. On June 30th, 1908, there was a massive explosion, and it devastated this entire area. Witnesses to the event say that shortly before the explosion, there was a large, bright beam passing through the sky that was as bright as the sun. And shortly after that beam was followed by a big crash or an explosion. Now, this was such a big explosion that the night sky was completely illuminated for weeks. 83 million trees were completely decimated. It covered approximately 800 square miles, or roughly the size of London. Now, what's strange about this explosion is that the pattern of the trees were radiating out from the center of where the explosion occurred, and more importantly, there was zero impact crater of whatever this was. So think about your typical bomb would leave a crater. Meteorite would leave a crater. This had zero craters, and so because of this, they hypothesized that the explosion didn't happen on impact with the earth, but it actually happened directly above the ground. To this day, over 100 years later, there are no trees in the area of where this explosion happened. Today, this event has widely become known as Russia's Roswell because a lot of theories have come about as to what actually caused the explosion. A lot of people think that it was just a space object, a comet or a meteorite that came down and happened to explode right before making impact with the earth. And others even theorize that it could have been a mini black hole or even a UFO crashing into earth and exploding right before it hit the ground. Which brings me to my theory today. I think Nikola Tesla is the actual one who caused this explosion, and I believe this is a much more rational and logical theory to believe. Now, here's what you need to know about Tesla. He was obsessed with the idea of wireless energy. So rather than having to take all these fucking wires just to plug in your cell phone at night, he wanted to do it wirelessly. His method of doing this was going to deliver free electricity to anyone in the world because they could tap into this field that he was researching. And this type of research is exactly what made Tesla himself such a revolutionary character in our understanding of electromagnetism. And to do this, he built what's known as the Tesla Tower. In roughly 1906, he got the funds to start doing this, and only 2 years later, due to some politics and funds running dry, the project was called off in around 1908, and the Tesla Tower was never put to use. Now, here's where the plot thickens. 1908 also happens to be the exact same year that the Tunguska event occurred. In roughly the late 1800s, a few short years before, he was working on something that he called the Teleforce ray. And the reporters who were writing articles about this, they started calling it the Tesla death ray. Here's exactly what he said and how this death ray would work. He said, "My apparatus projects particles which may be relatively large or of microscopic dimensions, enabling us to convey a small area at a great distance trillions of times more energy than is possible with rays of any kind. The nozzle would send concentrated beams of particles through the free air of such tremendous energy that they would bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy planes at a distance of 200 miles and will cause enemies to drop dead in their tracks." And many believe that this is something that never came to fruition. Maybe it was something that he wrote about or spoke about but never actually used. That is until his 78th birthday. A reporter asked him, "Hey Tesla, whatever happened to Teleforce? Did you ever use it? Did you ever invent it?" And he said this, and I quote, "It is not an experiment. I have built, demonstrated, and used it. Only time will pass before I can give it to the world." And because he said that, here's what many believe actually happened in 1908. The same year that his Tesla Tower completely failed, many believe that out of frustration, he fired this from a New York laboratory, trying to aim for somewhere in the Arctic region or even in the North Pole, and his calculations were just so slightly off that they ended up hitting the Siberian forest known as Tunguska. And the more conspiratorial version of that story says that it wasn't out of frustration randomly in his lab, but maybe he was demonstrating it for the US military who wanted to see this weapon in action. But regardless of the fact, many people don't have any trace of this death ray, and many people believe Tesla may have concluded that this weapon was so dangerous that he had to destroy it for the good of humanity. Fortunately for Tunguska, there were 0 deaths reported. The explosion size was said to be 1,000 times larger than the explosion of Hiroshima in World War II, and keep in mind, this occurred 37 years before the nuclear bomb was ever invented. So I'm curious, what do you think it was? Do you think it was actually a meteorite, which tends to be the most accepted theory out there for what it was, or do you think it was something more supernatural, like a mini black hole, or maybe an alien spacecraft that happened to come down and explode right above the surface of the ground? Either way, I'm not quite sure what it was, but today's video was one of my most convincing hypotheses that I personally tend to believe. Now, if you think this video is mind-blowing, then you'll definitely want want to watch this video right here or in the link in the description where I show you 3 videos that NASA has officially tried to cover up. Go watch it, check it out, and I'll see you in the next video.